We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Welcome to Finances, your home for all things financial, investment, money and lifestyle. Hosted and curated by the very talented team of certified financial planners, Burke Britton Financial Partners. This is the Finances podcast. I'm not sure whether you've listened to any of our podcasts, Alan. You have? Yeah. So we've given our listeners a sneak peek of you already. Alan Dobeson, welcome to this episode. We've got my co-host today, not my usual co-host. Peter's, he sort of floats in and out.
Jump in and out a bit, yeah.
Whenever you like. You can come in whenever you like.
As suits.
Now, we've had a few clients on the podcast in the past, Alan, and I think one of the things that I was keen to talk to you about is this kind of intersection between your history of management, leadership, and your passion for customer service, being at the sort of the business end of it for your working life, now being on the sort of client-facing end of it in the delivery of service that we do at Burke Britton.
Yep.
Before we get there, though, I always like to step back in time a little bit, as far as you're happy to go back and talk a little bit about where you came from, your background, because I know you've got some pretty interesting milestones and achievements over your journey. Let's go right back to where you were born, where you grew up, where you went to school. Take us back.
Right, born in Sydney in June 1953.
Happy 70th recently too, by
just
the way.
turned 70.
That's a good year, Peter, isn't it?
It is a good year.
Peter and I have that discussion quite regularly, that it was a very good year, vintage. Went to school, eastern suburbs, Coogee. Went to school, high school at Sydney Boys High, and played cricket and rugby.
Was Sydney Boys High, is that a public school, private school?
Public school that plays in the GPS system in Sydney. So selective high school at the time, you know. And I went because my brother had gone there, and it was one of those ones, you know. Well, and my brother would have been the biggest school failure ever. So I'm not sure, you know, if they'd looked at his records, I probably wouldn't have got in. But so
was Coogee back then a fairly affluent suburb, or was it? It was.
Yeah,
it wasn't.
Eastern suburbs of Sydney's always.
Okay.
Yeah. My mum and dad were just working people. You know, Dad had been in the Air Force in the war years, and then became a barrister's clerk for many years after he finished from the Air Force. And my mum was a part-time barmaid for 35 years. Okay. So, and I had one older brother, 14 years older. So that was my family. Yeah, but good, good people. You know, I was brought up with very good morals, and probably didn't always live up to them, but I was given the right background. So sort of good sense of fairness and things like that were important to me. So I played cricket and rugby at district level in Sydney. And in 1970, I worked at. I should say I got I did pretty good in the old high school certificate as it was then, and I wanted to be a teacher. And after about a month at university, I realised that you actually had to study, which came as a shock, and I was in deep trouble. I'd got through with a retentive memory, I think, and the gift of the gab of being, and also a very good storyteller and writing a book, or writing essays and stuff. So I dropped out of uni pretty quickly, much to my parents' horror. Got a public service job, which were easy to get back in those days. This had been 1972, and in 1973, I had a cousin working for Qantas, and he suggested that it might be a more exciting career to try and join the airline industry. So I worked as what they used to call a Christmas casual at TAA Mascot over the Christmas period, loading bags on aeroplanes, and then that was during my holidays. And then I went back to the public service job at the Sydney Water Board. Got a call a couple months later to from TA saying, would I be interested in a more permanent role doing customer service? And I really wasn't even sure what that was. And I said, well, yeah, sounds good. It was better money and shift work. So I took that on in May 1974.
Did you say that your father was in the Air Force?
My father was in the Air Force.
So was the link between aviation, you moving into aviation, just happenstance, or was there an influence from your father and what he'd done growing up?
No, he didn't. No, he was a flight lieutenant, but it was never. I wasn't really interested in flying airplanes. Okay. That, so no.
It just was a job opportunity.
Job opportunity, money, and I wanted to travel.
The door opened and you walked through.
I wanted to go to Europe and travel and do all that sort of stuff, and that was a plan. And but after 12 months, you get sort of shift work, you get 5 weeks leave, and you could travel, and so I realised I could travel for 5 weeks and then come back and and it was discounted, and then do it again the following year. So
paid to do it again.
So I didn't leave, and and I didn't leave till I took a redundancy in 2006.
Oh, wow.
But I worked my way up, so I'd started at the base level and I worked my way up through various roles in customer service to sort of, customer service supervisor at Sydney Airport, pretty full-on job on a busy day, to a duty manager. I moved to Perth and became what was titled Ramp Services Manager for the airline in Perth, which was looking after all the baggage handlers and the cleaners and the guys that do the catering and the ground side of that, the tarmac side of the operation.
Lots of moving parts.
Yeah, it's pretty full on. And then I became airport manager after the merge of Qantas and then what was then Australian Airlines in the early 90s. And so airport manager of Perth, then got an opportunity in 96 to come to Melbourne as Qantas boss of Melbourne Airport. So I did that for 5 years, and that was a really challenging job because it was a very industrial scene, To put it in perspective, I was the 20th Qantas airport manager at Melbourne Airport in 20 years.
So hard work.
So they didn't last, and I lasted 5 years. And then and after that, I got an opportunity to go to New Zealand to run Qantas operations in New Zealand, and that included South America. And at the time, Qantas had started flying domestically in New Zealand, so that was, opportunity to set all that up. But they were looking for people to go in 2006, and I was, I didn't want to go back to a corporate role, and I think that's where I was heading. And I'd spent 5 years in New Zealand almost with no one really knowing what I was doing, which was a great job. I could improve my golf handicap a little bit.
Did you play cricket over in New Zealand?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. But I did a bit of rugby. I've been a rugby referee as well. So, but a mate of mine who'd been a colleague at Qantas had approached me about. He was the Woolworths logistics manager for Australia, and he asked me would I be interested in a job coming back. So I got redundancy and came back to a job at Woolworths, based in where I met you guys.
Yeah, so that was circa 2006?
2006.
Yeah.
So that was interesting because, the distribution centre employed about 700 or 800 people. There was a lot of automation and I had no idea as to what it was about, because I'd spent 35 years in the airline industry, basically. So
it's funny you say that because obviously our first meeting was through the Woolies connection. I think it was the Woolies corporate super.
Yeah.
Any members of that, we had the opportunity to talk to people like yourself and a few others, which have become great long-term clients. But I'd never actually had that discussion with you about how you came to Woolies. I knew that you'd been in the airline industry. I knew you worked for a long, long time with Qantas, but how you came from New Zealand back to Woolies Australia, I didn't realise.
Yeah. So that was so I did that. I had that job for 5 years. It was like they're 24/7 jobs, but you don't get it's Woolies is all the supermarkets are very demanding on their people, in senior levels. So it was quite stressful and tiring because I was just. Interesting to put it in perspective back to the financial side of it. Woolworths just announced a huge profit, and people say, "Well, how come prices aren't cheaper?" But if you put that in perspective, it's about 3% of their total turnover. You wouldn't run a corner store on 3%
return.
No. So and they employ probably 200 to 250,000 Australians. So I do have a soft spot for Woolies, but I left because the guy that employed me had left, and the culture changed, and I didn't like it, and I left. And my skills weren't. I hadn't been brought in from my operational house because we were in deep manure. If they're waiting for me to come up with operational calls, and I told the guys that at one of my very early meetings, I said, you guys know what to do. Let's just get on with it. So. And they hadn't actually been trusted to do it, so that was interesting. So
good leadership, Alan.
Yes, yeah. Well, it was. I'd been hired to, because my skills were really dealing with the people and sorting out the union stuff and all that sort of stuff. And I didn't do that by bashing them. I did it by involving them. So
you actually mentioned something at lunch, Alan, when we were having a chat, and you mentioned something about giving ownership and responsibility to those people that surround you, rather than giving them a clip to get their support. Maybe on that point, where did that philosophy come, your philosophy in management and administration of people and management of people and leadership? What was the foundation of that for you?
We would go back to the airline industry in the early days where people just got a clip. It was very hierarchical, almost military-like, and it didn't work. and I actually became a union rep as a result. Back in the probably late 70s, because I used to think there must be a better way of doing this because we're just bashing heads all the time and it's silly. So I kind of had that from there, and I always had a view that if I ever got an opportunity to be the boss, I was going to do it a lot differently to these people did it, So when I got that opportunity, that's exactly what I did.
Was any of that influence, that militaristic influence, come from your dad, or
no?
Not really.
No. Anything but. My dad was a real gentleman,
Okay.
To be honest with you. Yeah. And he was the he was probably the most unlikely flight lieutenant in senior person because he didn't like confrontation at all. He would have avoided it. So. Yeah. So I guess my philosophy was to involve people, and what I learned very early on, if you trust people, they very rarely let you down. And I also said at lunch, people know when they've made a mistake. So you don't need to beat them. You just need to say, what did you learn from it? And that's the philosophy I always took into, what I did. So, and encourage them to make decisions. Interesting time, but it will is because people who haven't had trust, you just can't give them trust because they're wary.
Yes.
So you've got to absolutely let them go. And just sort of, I think Peter mentioned, that he's right. The best leaders walk behind, and they just create the opportunities. And the other thing you do is you run protection for your people to let them get on with it. So, and that's pretty challenging. So that means you've got to manage up, and that's probably the further up the chain you go. The challenge isn't so much, I think, in dealing with the people reporting to you, as dealing with the people you report to.
Yes,
that becomes the challenge. So
your comment a moment ago, though, about seeing how badly some organisations manage, like your time in the airlines early on. I think some of the greatest learnings we get, and if you're open to it, is seeing things done really badly, because it shows you what not to do. But it also shows you that you've got to find an alternative to that. And I think that's a great thing if you're prepared to open yourself up and try and seek improvement.
Yeah.
I think myself, some of the best coaching experiences I had as a person being coached was by the shit coaches. The people that just had no damn idea. So when you end up becoming one yourself, you know exactly the stuff that you don't want to be and the things you don't want to do. And, leading and managing people, seeing it done badly, you just want to be better at it, don't you? You want to find an alternative.
And if you've played any sort of sport, and had to deal with coaching or that of people, the other thing that I think I learnt from that side of it, coaching, and I've refereed rugby at a really high level. And at the highest level, it's you've got to know the law and you've got to be fit, but you've got to be a people manager because you're running around trying to manage 15 guys on either side who want to kill each other. Volatile emotions. So you've got to try and do that with a sense of humour. Yeah. And that always worked. And I just think if you, as I said earlier, it's a great philosophy of mine was that and I read it somewhere where that I said it. I said it at lunchtime. If you beat a child every time they fell over as a baby, they're not going to care too much for walking. Yeah, and the other thing that I think is that I got and in dealing with people was that encouraging them to understand that not everyone's the same. And you see that in sporting events. Sporting coaches now get that. They didn't back when you and I would have played, and probably even Jay when you played. You just
it was black and it was white, wasn't
exactly,
it?
Exactly. But you see people talk about that a lot today. And I used to give an example. I'd say to because my first line supervision at Woolworths were all blokes probably between 25 and 40, and they all had kids and they were all dads. And I just say to them, so you got 2 kids? Yeah, they're the same. Oh no. No. So, I said, well, you got to apply that philosophy to the people that are reporting to you on a daily basis. And some people you can be very firm with, and another person you do that and you just destroy them. So you got to know who to cuddle and who to sort of nudge, if you know what I mean, to get the outcome. And I think in sporting terms now, I think really good coaches kind of get that. And they talk about it,
But that's leadership broadly. I mean, and sport is a great example of it. And those of us that have been lucky enough to have sporting involvements, you get lots of life lessons out of sport. But I think leading a family, leading a small business, leading a large corporation, at all level, the same principles apply. The same philosophies of, giving people a chance to make mistakes and not be beaten up for it, giving people a chance to develop confidence in themselves, giving people a chance to feel ownership in the journey that you're going on and the vision you have for wherever you are.
Yeah.
And I think all those things, and again, that's probably from our perspective why it's great to have someone like yourself as a client with all that history talking to us, because, I love the fact that you challenge, when we have conversations, if something's not quite right, you'll challenge us, but it's always done respectfully.
Yeah.
You throw things at us that are not right, not to your expectation. So you can improve, you can keep improving, and we're never going to get it 100% right.
Yeah.
But if we seek improvement and we accept that feedback, sometimes it's negative. That's always not easy to take if things have gone wrong. But it's fantastic.
No, I'm conscious that I'm not a picky person. But if I think something's not quite right in lots of things, and not just Burke Britton, but you and I have had a good relationship, Peter, from day one. Because we sort of had similar sort of upbringings and background, I think. And I always think that if I say something in a constructive manner, I feel pretty confident you're going to listen.
Yes.
If I was just screaming at you, yeah, right. but there's not. It's just a matter of saying, look, this happened and that happened, and I reckon maybe you could have done it better. And you always say, thanks, mate. That's a really good point. And the business learns from that. But
Absolutely.
You're right. So getting and the other thing is you're much better off having a customer who takes time to tell you that something's not right than tell the rest of the world, because customers don't tell you now what's wrong. That they tell
the world.
Hop on the phone and tell the world without giving you the opportunity. So my philosophy is that I'll tell you, and invariably where that I've had those conversations with yourself is that you'll come back to me and say, yeah, mate, I've taken that on board and we'll fix that. I just see it's that's not only to your benefit, but it's to my benefit and your other customers, that if we can improve something, and I'm not egotistical or anything like that. I just, I've had big jobs and I've, got a lot of learnings. There's a lot in this old grey head that, I'm happy to share and have those opportunities with you guys to say, look, I reckon this could be better, or this, have you thought of this? I even talked to you about this sort of stuff probably 12 or 18 months ago. So
spot on.
Really
Exactly.
good to have customers come and talk to you or your staff, because
It took us a while to get you here, but we've finally done it.
Tyranny of distance, unfortunately. So.
To that point, maybe getting a little bit granular, what are the things from a client-facing perspective that you, as a client of Burke Britton, what are the things that you value in terms of advice and service? Like, what are the things that you rate highly in terms of advice and service and the relationship? Relationship's probably obviously one of them, but what are the key items that you, as a client,
what? And they're not; these aren't big ticket items, and they've got nothing to do with the financial side of it directly. But my most frustrating thing is if I ring and no one rings me back, because I just think that's, I used to be passionate about that myself, and I think people get in a habit, if they haven't got the answer, they don't ring you back because they haven't got the answer. Well, I'd still like someone to ring me and say, I'm following it up for you, Alan. I don't have the answer yet. I'm on it. And as soon as I get it, I'll ring you back. Then just not ring me. And then I follow up again a couple of days later, and it happened here, and the guy's gone. And I said to him, and he said, oh, yeah, they haven't got back to us. And I said, well, were you going to tell me? Because I'm patient. I don't mind if they haven't got back to you, but I just think you've ignored me. You haven't taken my call. So well,
if you don't know, you don't know. Like, and if you're not giving any feedback at all, and again, we take that on board very much. If we're not giving you any feedback at all, then your mind goes to a million different places. Oh, they don't care, or they're not bothering, or they can't find me an answer. Yeah. If you come back and say, we're working on it, at least it's being worked.
And it doesn't necessarily, have to be a phone call. It can, be an email or text.
Yeah.
Just say, mate, onto it, waiting for them to call me back. Be back.
Let you know as soon as possible.
If to me, that is, customer service 101.
Yeah.
And you've only got to listen to talk about radio about people trying to ring Qantas or someone like that now as to how annoyed they are that they can't get through or can't get answers. And, for an organisation this side, there should be no excuses to, ringing someone or texting them and just saying, I haven't forgotten you. I'm on it, but I need an answer from these guys and I will follow it up. Great. Thank you.
And that feedback's gold because, whilst sometimes we feel that we're fairly responsive, it only takes one or two occasions where one of the team fails to do what we expect to be the norm.
Yeah.
And it can blow up dramatically. And we don't want it to happen to anyone, but let alone someone who's been a great client, a friend of us, friend of ours for a long time. So those things are critical that you tell us, because we can't fix it if we don't know.
So I generally think your communication is really good. If I had And I think these are great because I do listen to them myself. But the other thing that I would think would be invaluable for you guys is that every month to send me an email with, this is how things are tracking, this is the portfolio, and that doesn't necessarily have to be specific to me. It could be, this is where what we're doing generally.
And
then every quarter, just give me a one-page, this is how your one's going. So it's personalised, it's to me.
Yeah.
And, I don't need to ring you or say, if any questions, ring, but this is what we're doing. I would really value that because otherwise I have to kind of ring or wait or something changes, you'll let me know, or Delta will let me know. But I just reckon, I don't know how many, I'm sure a lot of your clients listen to these.
They do.
But I reckon if they get an email from you, they're going to read it. Because sometimes these things you think, oh, yeah, I've done it. I want to listen to that, but then I forget. But an email I do read. So that was all I said. A monthly snapshot of the business and what's happening generally, and a quarterly directed at me as to, this is your portfolio, mate, and how's it going. So I know I'd value that.
While you're on a roll with these, Alan, we're recording these, so this is great for the team. I'm loving this. What else? I mean, there's 2 or 3 absolute gold nuggets that are great feedback. Anything else that's high on your priority list or you'd expect would be high on other clients' priority list in terms of expectations around advice delivery or service that you can think of?
Well, it probably is a frustration, but it's not. I don't think there's much can be done about it. I sometimes think there's a lag between advice and action.
Yeah.
And
Tell us about
and I find that, and I know that a lot of that's regulatory and it's difficult, but sometimes I've had examples where the advice was buy and the price was X, and by the time the advice was executed, we still went ahead, but the price was X minus 10%.
Yeah.
And I think I really like that idea at the day, but 8 weeks later, I'm not as keen now because it's not. It doesn't seem like it's the best buy. You know what I mean? And I kind of get that you guys have got lots of hurdles to ensure, and so maybe that needs to be explained a bit better, or maybe you need to be more proactive in terms of how do we fast track this? Because if we've got people and we're buying and selling shares for them, they probably have an expectation that the advice we're given is that's going to be close to the price.
Yeah.
Like you and I, as very much the same vintage. In when I began my life in planning, which was 27, coming up 28 years ago now, that you could do things quickly, like you could action things quickly. And I actually was almost to the detriment often. Like I remember stories about, 2 blokes having a beer at the pub and the guy riding on the back of a beer coaster, some thoughts about planning, and the guy dropping a big check in the next morning and it happening. That's how quickly things could happen. Yep. But that had its risks attached too. And then the industry went into overkill. Like they went crazy the other way, where rules and regulations, and instead of protecting you, the end user, the client, it was just protecting the big dealer groups from bad publicity, and all it meant was that we were bound down by massive layers of bureaucracy, of all of the requirements and paperwork, which meant things went on for 6 or 8 weeks longer than they needed to execute a fairly simple transaction. Thankfully, and Jay can talk to this, it's been very much a bone of contention with all of us in planning about how we can't do what you need quickly for you, the client. And there's some really positive things happening with the way the constraints that are being imposed upon us by the dealer group and the industry broadly, the regulators, are being relaxed significantly. And I'll let Jay perhaps talk to it to put a bit of clarity around, or a bit of comfort for you, but clarity around the detail. It looks like it's heading far more sensibly the other way, where minimal paperwork and agreement between 2 people that have got a pretty good idea of what's going on, and we can make it happen. It mightn't be 24 hours, but it won't be 6 or 8 weeks.
Yep.
So,
so I mean, without getting bogged down in too much of the detail, the regulator had completed and the government completed a massive review into the financial services sector. A lot of that has seen an exodus of advisors from the sector, and I think for the longest time we were sort of catering to the lowest common denominator in terms of advisors. The exodus of advisors, I think, although it's been difficult for a lot of people, has been a good thing, because the cowboys are gone, and what's left are the long-tenured businesses that actually have scale and scope to be able to deliver good service and advice. The follow-on from that is the loosening, if you like, of the regulatory restraints. So the statements of advice that you would see that take us the best part of a month to generate in most instances, and have that lag time, particularly when we've got transactions that are dependent upon that advice in the very near future. And I won't put timeframes on it, but we are refining that process with the regulator's approval and should see us be able to turn our advice documentation around, particularly when we're talking investment switches, within days, not weeks and months. And for some clients, and again, I'm sort of talking about what's coming in. We haven't sort of released this to the world yet, but we're in the process of putting together an actively managed Burke Britton portfolio that will allow us, with the use of technology, to trade for the clients that it's suitable for globally when there's a change required. So rather than necessarily requiring every client to sign off individually on a trade, for those clients that want that, we potentially can trade at a global level very quickly on the up and down swing of the market and avoid that time out of the market. So a couple of really exciting things coming. But we have definitely felt clients' frustration in that period of time. And one of the challenges for us was to make sure that we are absolutely fully resourced out the back from a manpower point of view. But maybe more importantly, to your couple of earlier points, Alan, making sure that from a customer delivery point of view, it's great to have all the people out the back, but ultimately if we're not delivering on our customer service, then we're not going to have any clients. So
that's great. That's great news. That, because to me, like I see, and I would be party to that, I can tell you straight up, because it just seems to me that if you agree a course of action and some advice, that if you send me a document with DocuSign and I just, that for that page that relates to, well, I've covered it. This is the device. I've signed it on my computer. It's back to you, and in 5 minutes of getting it, there's a record. That I agree to it. So anyway, that's great news.
Well, we're actually also getting, again, without getting too far off track, this is an area I'm passionate about from a compliance point of view. We're actually getting to the point where we have ongoing verbal authority. There will be some documentation that literally won't require signing. Some clients can still have the opportunity to sign it, but those that are happy for a global authority to proceed, it can be a verbal acknowledgement or it can be a global acknowledgement to proceed within their risk tolerance at certain times. So that's all change that really hasn't existed for us in the industry. And I'm excited to talk to you about that offline as well.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think that's fantastic because I've had a couple of examples. But look, having said that, I've had examples where the advice was to buy, and it's taken same, and the price has gone down, and I've benefited from the other side of it. So I'm not.
But that's lucky dip, isn't it? Really,
and that's how it feels.
Yeah, it shouldn't be like that. No, it shouldn't be reliant on good or bad fortune. It should just be timing and done.
That's really interesting.
Yep.
So we're always seeking ways to make it easier and better, unfortunately, and this is not an excuse, it's the fact that the layers of compliance, the bureaucratic burdens that have been brought on the industry over the last decade have made it hard.
Oh, it's the way of the world, Peter.
It's just sad. It's a sad fact of life. That's right.
If I did what I did in management, with HR today, I wouldn't have a job. The way I used to muck around with people and have a laugh, so I'd be out the door, I think.
We're the same generation.
That's right. It was just, give everyone a hard time and have a laugh, so.
Now, I'm mindful of the fact that we've got a dinner to get to tonight. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about in closing with Alan? Or
I suppose just in summary, I think one of the great things about being in this industry that I've been lucky enough to fall into 27, 28 years ago is that you come across people like you, Alan, that you've worked in very, very significantly senior roles, and yet still we've got a lot of common ground. We got on well right from the beginning, apart from the fact that we were both born in 53 and we're both into sport and all those sorts of things. There's a lot of common ground, and I think that relationship that we've, I'm lucky enough to have built with many people like yourself is one of the reasons I love doing what I do, and one of the reasons why I'm happy to continue to do it, albeit in a slower pace with Jay taking over. But I think from, the thank you to you, because the many conversations we've had and you raised the idea of talking to us about customer service. So, we've taken on board very much the feedback from you. And rather than just you talking to us as a business, this idea of talking to us as a business through a podcast means that, the bit of information you can provide us we can broadcast to anyone who wants to listen to these podcasts. So I think, we love the ideas, we love the relationship, and the fact that you give us fantastic, respectfully honest feedback. Hopefully this can be taken much more broadly to our client base and others and benefit many, many people. So thank you for...
Just on a final note, the other thing that I think your business has been really good for me has been estate planning, which, is critical, I think, to the business and the, pointing me in the right direction of the right legal people to talk to about that. And also, even when I was employed, and I still use him, was through like people like Tim Burness for my tax and stuff like that. So whilst I don't need to do a return anymore, my wife and my daughter both go through Tim. So
it's really good to hear you say that, because that theme of us surrounding our clients with the professionals and the support that they actually require, whether it be the financial advisors, the brokers, the estate planners, the mortgage brokers, the accountants, it's so important. Those third-party relationships that actually make the delivery of service for you, the end client, much more satisfying, I think it's really great to hear that that's of value. The other thing I'd say for the listeners out there, particularly our clients, you mentioned a couple of times, Alan, in terms of providing feedback and not being afraid of providing feedback. I think we encourage it. We value the feedback. There is an email that's just gone out, so this is purely for our clients, an email from the Bedos Institute. So there's an anonymous survey that's gone out.
I've just done it.
Yep, which I think is an excellent opportunity for clients to, it's not a Google review, so we're not going to see it, but you can be open and honest about your feedback of what we're doing well, where we could improve. And I think we'll take that along with the conversation we've had with you, Alan. I think I made a note here that I think if you are open to it, Alan, I think having you back in person with our team to maybe talk some more about the value that clients see in advice and service, I think it would be greatly valued.
No problem. Happy to do it. And just as a final, I learned this many years ago, and I think it's really valuable for people wanting to provide feedback. I've never, ever had a problem with anyone questioning my judgment. I was antsy if they questioned my integrity.
Yes.
So I think people should be comfortable to talk to you guys. And if it's just, and even if it's not something you might be able to do, it might just be by way of an explanation. It's good to get the feedback, But if they want to question your integrity, well, then that's a different issue. I used to have problems with that. But, I never minded anyone telling me that there was probably a better way of doing it because I didn't have all the answers, So.
Well, each of us should get up in the morning wanting to be a little bit better than we were the day before, and one of the best ways to do that is to listen to feedback from those around you.
Absolutely. I get plenty of feedback from my wife. Not always that constructive.
Is Amanda coming tonight?
No, she's working. So
okay, no worries. Yeah. All right, well, Alan, thanks again for joining us on this episode. I hope you can join us on a future episode. We'd love to have you back. Thanks again for all of your insight into your life, your time in business, and also your time as a client here at Burke Britton. So thanks again.
Thanks for driving down from Koroit.
Cheers.
Good on you, mate. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're keen to understand more about how financial advice could benefit you, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Burke Britton FP, or Google Burke Britton Financial Partners. Check out our client reviews, testimonials, and make a time to meet one of our certified financial planners by clicking Book Now on our website. Thanks for listening.
Any information contained in this podcast is of a general nature only. No account was taken as to the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. Therefore, before making any decision, listeners should consider the appropriateness of any information with regard to their particular objective, financial situation, needs, and seek independent advice from a licensed professional specific to their circumstances.
All right, hit it.
That translates to, don't be a moron and act on what some random person says on a podcast. Take personal responsibility. Do your homework. Ask questions and speak to an actual human that knows what they're talking about before you do anything. PB Financial Solutions Proprietary Limited, trading as Burke Britton Financial Partners, are authorised representatives of AMP Financial Planning Limited, AFS, licence number 232706.